Hey people, what's going on? And welcome to the JAMEEL RAWLS show. And I'm still working on my series about the brown about the brown berets and the Zoot Suiters and the Chicano American community and the Black Panthers, the era of the 1960s. Today, what we're going to go through is an interesting subject. We're going to talk about the mafia, and today we're going to hit some historical points. And fortunately for myself, I've never had to deal with a group such as that. But in an American context, most people hear the word mafia and they don't get the connotation on it. It doesn't really mean anything. When somebody says the mafia, it doesn't mean anything. Point being, you can go on YouTube dealing with the Italian American community and you Google mafia, you have mafia groups like the Camorra Mafia of northern Italy. And the Camorra Mafia is a real Italian mafia group, but they're not affiliated with what you call La Cosa Nostra. Now, I did a video on the last Brown Beret video or whatever I did when I was making a cross-reference between the Chicano community and the blacks coming in as immigrants and how the Italians came in as immigrants. Now, Paolo Vassarelli, who changed his name to Edward Kelly because he was Italian but he became a boxer. He created what you know as the 5 Points Gang in New York. Now, he was the mentor of Luciano and Capone, and the 5 Points Gang thus turned themselves into the Five Families officially. So, but the thing about the 5 Points Gang is they also created the New York Fire Department. They're also very closely related to the New York Police Department. So over the years, people have gone back and said, the mob is dangerous, but they created the fire department, all these organizations in New York. So there, thus being said, so you have the creation of the 5 Points Gang. You have the creation of the five families, which is Bonanno, Genovese, Colombo, Lucchese, Gambino, on and on and on. And then you have other mafia groups out there in the world, like the Camorra mob and other mob families, who have nothing to do with La Cosa Nostra. They're separate entities. Now, growing up as a child, my grandmother was a lawyer, and she used to explain all this stuff to me. So I used to hear about the mafia over and over and over again. And you hear, so let me get back to, I got some excellent reading material. One thing you're going to come across is the FBI is anti-Italian. The FBI is anti-Italian. Now, what's being said there is traditionally these Italian groups, much like the Bloods and the Crips, had to take care of their own people. So in the early 1900s, you didn't have anybody in the Italian community who cared about the Italian people. The cops didn't care. The government didn't care. So the Italians had to protect themselves. So going back to Italy and Sicily, the local chieftains in the area who controlled the commerce, who controlled the farming, the agriculture, making wine and such, they always had a struggle against the government. And they had their own little secret groups. And so when they came into America, they found that the American government wasn't much different from the atrocities they had faced in their own motherland. And the biggest issue they would have is with people trying to portray them in a sense as monsters. You would have people like in the 1970s, you would have a really difficult issue where you would have politicians trying to use the mob to cover up their crimes. And they would sit there and say, well, it must be the mafia, because who else could have done it to cover up their crimes? And what you're going to see, I got a lot of interesting material on the mob. What you're going to see, let me get back to one of my other articles. This is a newspaper article. I bought this at the store. The mob with Al Capone and all of them. And I hadn't had an interest in the mob in years. I used to read old books about the mob years ago. Salvador Mooney, you got. And this stuff, see, one thing you got to realize that's serious about this stuff is, which I'm thankful I've never had to participate in it. But if you actually do know something about these people or something like that, and you talk about it on the telephone, and especially you can lose your life quick, even in today's world. Like Vincent Chins, Vincent Chins would Vincent Chins would order hits on people just for talking about him on the phone. He didn't even know him, just for talking about him on the phone. And of course, this gets into Italian civil rights organizations started by Joe Colombo. And hold on one second. What's more interesting reading material? I'm a little rusty on the subject. What's the more interesting reading material? Let's see. Here we go. That's not the book. But you have the Anti-Italian Defamation League. You have the Anti-Italian Defamation League, which has a very interesting history. The group's ostensible purpose was to prevent Italian Americans as a group from being defamed. Okay, the group's ostensible purpose was to prevent Italian Americans as a group from being defamed, primarily by being uniformly stereotyped as all being involved with related to persons or activities associated with the mafia. See, that's the problem that the Italian community has always had, is people have no concept of what mafia is. And they can say, mafia. You don't know what it is. You're stupid. You don't know what it is. So that's... The mafia protested the Godfather. Joseph Colombo formed the group originally called the Italian American Anti-Defamation League in 1970. This is some interesting material. Italian civil rights groups are very interesting. So that's one thing you don't, that's one thing people, fortunately myself, I never had to deal with it, but I always tell, that's one thing people have to read up. That's one thing you don't do, is go around running your mouth about stuff you don't know about like that. I heard stories about a guy, he was running around talking about stuff and he just disappeared one day. And so, excuse me for a second, I'm looking for more information. The Sopranos was a good show. The Sopranos was a very good show. The Sopranos was based on an actual real mob group back in Jersey, what's it called? The Cavalcantes. I can't pronounce that. I'm not Italian, so, but you know, well, that's what it is. That's mainly the thing. If you sit here and you read all these anti-Italian defamation organization material, you're going to realize that the FBI is anti-Italian. Like that movie Casino, where they came and showed what's his name? The actor Robert De Niro. They came and showed Robert De Niro pictures of Joe Pesci, and just sat there saying, "Isn't this the guy? Isn't this the guy?" And tried to instigate some sort of thing, a racial discrimination case. And that's the Mafia on the Jameel Rawls show. Next, we'll have the Brown Berets, and next we'll have the Brown Berets and the Zoot Suiters and all that stuff on the Jameel Rawls show.